one of the first moments in the history of healthcare, as at least as long as I've been following it very closely, healthcare technology. We need technology. There's really no other way out. We need some level of not just assistance, but also augmentation. We need automation from technology in a way we did before.
Welcome to Unnatural Selection, a show about competition, innovation, and the strategies shaping tomorrow's frontiers. I'm Nick Encina. Each week, we speak with pioneers shaping the future.
This is episode 10, produced in partnership with Mass General Brigham's World Medical Innovation Forum. Today, we explore how ambient AI is reshaping one of the most human elements of medicine, the conversation between doctor and patient. Abridge is building technology to transform those conversations into structured clinical notes, instantly and accurately, freeing up clinicians to focus on care. In this episode, we look at how AI is being shaped to give time back, what it really takes for new technology to earn trust in medicine, and why tools only survive when they adapt to the culture they're meant to serve. Our guest is Dr. Shiv Rao. Bio. Shiv Rao is the founder and CEO of Abridge, a generative AI platform that unburdens clinicians from clerical work, such as clinical documentation, enabling them to focus more fully on patient care. Abridge integrates seamlessly within EHR clinician workflows across care settings, specialties, and spoken languages. In 2025, Abridge was named to the Forbes AI 50 list and the Fast Company Most Innovative Companies list. Abridge has also been recognized in the Fortune AI 50 list, the Forbes Cloud 100 list, and as one of Time's Best Inventions of 2024. Dr. Rao was also recently named as one of the 100 most influential people in AI by Time magazine and as one of the 100 most influential people in healthcare by Modern Healthcare. He is a practicing cardiologist at UPMC and previously led the provider-facing investment portfolio for UPMC, where he invested in startups and helped fund a machine learning and health program at Carnegie Mellon University. Dr. Rao completed his medical education and training at the University of Michigan and the University of Pittsburgh School of Medicine, and studied at Carnegie Mellon, where he programmed virtual synthesizers and skateboarded in IMAX movies. Let's go.
Shiv, welcome to Unnatural Selection.
Thanks so much, Nick. It's a privilege to be here.
I always start with the same question just to level set and give some context to the listeners. Could you please tell us what business you're in and what is your role within that business?
Yeah, we are a vertical AI company focused on healthcare, and I'm the founder and CEO of Abridge.
Perfect. And for those unfamiliar with Abridge or ambient AI, how would you describe what your company does and how it fits into the broader transformation happening in healthcare right now?
Yeah, we are focused on unburdening clinicians from clerical work. And the idea is really to use technology to bring people closer together. So, to give you a little bit more of a sense, after every single conversation that a doctor has with a patient, whether it's in the outpatient world, whether it's in the emergency department, whether it's in the inpatient hospital, they have to subsequently document all of their work, all of their thinking. And they have to do that not just for clinical communication purposes, so that the next nurse or doctor or resident or fellow reads that note and kind of understands where they were coming from with the care plan that they subsequently prescribed. But they also have to do that for patient understanding and follow through, because all of us as people, as patients, we have access to these notes as well to give us a sense of a reminder of what we actually have to focus on or want to focus on from our own kind of health standpoint. But then there's also the perspective of revenue cycle. Every single one of these notes is actually a bill in some way, shape, or form. And so getting it right the first time is super important for everyone involved, including administrators and health system executives.
Clinical documentation has always been seen as a burden to clinicians. How do you think that Abridge's approach might change that dynamic?
Yeah, so over these last 3 years, we've had the incredible privilege of being able to scale our solution across the country. We're now live across well over 100 health systems across the country, and what those health systems, what their doctors are telling us is that this is an absolute game changer for them. That for the first time, they're able to be fully present with their patients in front of them, and know full well that after they hit stop on a bridge and they swivel their chair, they're going to have a draft of a note there for them to trust and verify. And that note should not just be clinically useful. It should not just be useful from the perspective of a cardiologist like me, for example, but also from the perspective of any specialist out there. It also needs to be compliant from a revenue cycle perspective because of that administrative function and purpose that these notes serve, as bills essentially. And so we can check off all those different boxes, and that's allowed us to scale. And we can also check off all the boxes that enterprises expect, obviously, from this technology in order to deem it trustworthy, in order to deem it, safe and secure to be able to scale across their entire system.
Hmm. And what are the hardest parts in actually integrating this the Abridge solution into legacy clinical workflows? How do you overcome resistance from entrenched systems or behaviors that have been around for 100 years?
Well, I think that's part of what's helped serve our growth over these last few years, especially, is that we can very deeply integrate into existing workflows. Certainly, I'm a doctor who grew up with specific technologies, and one of those technologies is the electronic medical record and Epic specifically, and we can deeply integrate with Epic on the mobile front, what they call Haiku, but also on the desktop medical record, and that's really important, not just from the standpoint of where we are today, but also where we're quickly going, which is into workflows that are just beyond the node itself, for example, like order entry. But just to kind of give folks a sense of where we came from, we started our company in 2018, and we started just a few months actually after Google Research had published a paper called Attention is All You Need. And Transformers, which is what that paper was really all about, certainly underpin all the things that we've been doing and that we continue to do. The TNGPT stands for Transformers, and all of generative AI is underpinned by Transformers. But my co-founder and I, and my co-founder is an associate professor at Carnegie Mellon University, and he's our chief technology and science officer at Abridge. His name's Zach Lipton, but Zach and I think at that point in time also sort of could sense, where things were going in terms of this technology, and had a spidey sense or a bit of conviction that transformers and this type of technology could change healthcare as well. So we started with pre-trained models, like, for all the geeks listening, like Bird and then Firebird and then Longformer and then Pegasus, and certainly LLMs entered our stack in 2022, I think, in a very serious way. And certainly since then, we've just been going deeper and deeper and deeper. But what I think we've recognized is that it takes deep technology expertise to be able to go millions of miles deep and differentiate from a product perspective. And that means that even if you're an application layer company, you want to be able to reach down in at least a couple layers into the stack to be able to own and control your destiny. It also takes deep technical integration, integration into electronic medical records, as I mentioned, in order to create the best possible user experience. But it also takes, good theses around all things related to go to market, because certainly that's one of the big challenges in healthcare. Prior to this, I used to be a corporate VC at one of the large health systems in the country, and go to market was always, one area where companies could get it, very wrong, and oftentimes not have enough time to be able to course correct.
That's great. And if we look at you spoke about a bunch of different levers across the innovation spectrum. If we look at the full arc of innovation, from how you make money to how users experience your product, where do you think a bridge has innovated most deliberately?
Well, it all starts with products and technology. So we take a lot of pride in how deep we're going there. For example, in terms of our stack of technologies, there's a speech recognition system, because it's a system of multiple models that we take pride in being best in class across, being able to recognize medical terminology across all the different specialties, the symptoms, medications, diagnoses, and procedures that people verbalize. Also, being able to do this across all the different languages out there. We can, support probably just under 100 languages, and we've benchmarked something around maybe like a third of that. We've benchmarked in terms of medical term recall and word error rate, technical kind of benchmarks that allow us to keep ourselves honest in terms of being best in class. But speech recognition is still just, scratching the surface in terms of the science and the R&D that we do in the company. So much of it is on the text and language side of things. And there, it's about, what we call pre-training models, being able to think that expansive, but increasingly it's about fine tuning models that are available to all of us, being able to fine tune against a very specific use case, being able to also post train, where we're probably putting, more and more of our effort is going into that world where we're now at scale and we're doing millions of encounters probably every few days or so. And so when we're at that kind of scale, how can we learn from all the edits and all the feedback that clinicians give us all the time? And so that creates its own sort of loop. And so that kind of a data network, if you will, is really core to our thesis around all things defensibility. But that's still probably not the whole picture. I think that networks and partnerships and alliances, distribution channels, co-development relationships, whether it's with an NVIDIA, whether it's with an Epic, whether it's with any of the distribution channels out there, which are their own kind of separate bucket of potential partners. That's really important in healthcare. And also on the experience side, how customers actually interact with this technology is super important. It's not just customer service, it's really a whole discipline that we call partner success at Abridge. And being able to land is one thing, but being able to expand means that you really need to demonstrate to every single health system partner that you understand the gravity of this product, of this technology that you've deployed, and how it's increasingly a part of their infrastructure. And so it's not just reliability from the standpoint of technology, but it's reliability from the perspective of how we collect and respond to feedback quickly and demonstrate that we can move as quickly as the best startup, even if we're capitalized as well as any company in this space.
And you're obviously in a space that's evolving very quickly. Well, at least a component of your business is AI, which seems to evolve in leaps and bounds monthly. And yet you're in a highly regulated, high stakes environment. So, how do you think about speed versus safety? But even thinking about the pace at which your customers can absorb new innovations, how do you balance all that? Where so much gas is going on the hardcore innovation of AI, but you're within healthcare. So, there's a balance there in what you can and can't do and how fast, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think good, strong, solid process is really, really important. And you know, having process also in relation to how you interact with these health system partners, but how you develop product in the first place. So a lot of folks talk about evals. How do you evaluate your technology, your latest sort of machine learning pipeline, your AI pipeline, and its outputs? How do you demonstrate that it can these outputs, this product can really scale this new feature that you've developed across all the different partners out there and all their different settings? There's a lot to be able to account for, and it takes real scientific rigor to do the experiments and to understand that something is safe before you deploy it. Now, that's certainly a fabric of how we operate because we believe in our company that the actual currency that ends up mattering in healthcare is trust. The only thing that actually matters is trust. And trust is some combination of transparency, reliability, and credibility. So being able to demonstrate that we have this process, that we're transparent about this process ourselves internally, and then when we come to our health system partner with a new feature, that as they go through their governance process and give us permission, give us a green light to turn it on and scale it, that they can really hang their hat on the metrics that we're sharing with them is very important. So I'd say evaluation and evals in general is super important. Being on the same page with these health system partners around what we can ship, dynamically, like how our machine learning models, for example, could learn about a personal preference of a nephrologist, in Boston, and how we can maybe dynamically, just automatically potentially ship improvements if it's something that doesn't really have any deleterious consequences on some other aspect of the health system. But also making clear that there are certain types of product improvements, iterations that require, that level of governance and require us to be, very, very deliberate together because, perhaps change management is even involved. I think that's a part of being enterprise grade in healthcare.
Yeah, and for as difficult as enterprise sales are generally, and then add the layer of regulation on top of it from healthcare, your product is still um, your technology spreading through large systems like Mayer and Kaiser and other major health systems. Have you learned something new, or what have you learned about getting your innovations adopted in this kind of environment?
I think that the current environment in healthcare is it's a special kind of moment right now, and I think it starts with a problem that we're all facing that is really a public health emergency in a way. It's that clinicians are burning out, and that 2 out of 5 doctors don't want to be doctors in the next 2 to 3 years. That 27% of nurses per JAMA don't want to be nurses in the next year or so, and so we have this public health emergency. We have supply demand mismatches in care delivery that are already impacting rural health systems and causing them to shut down and forcing patients to have to drive 5 to 6 hours into an inner city hospital to see their rheumatologist who could potentially save their life. So we have to do something about it. And, perhaps for one of the first moments in the history of healthcare, as at least as long as I've been following it very closely, healthcare technology, we need technology. There's really no other way out. We need some level of not just assistance, but also augmentation. We need automation from technology in a way we didn't before. So I think what the market has realized over these last few years is that there's certain use cases in healthcare that are lower stakes, and especially when those use cases are high frequency, being able to point these new AI tools at those use cases can be incredibly high yield, because you'll be able to quantify and measure that ROI very, very quickly. And certainly on that end of the spectrum, there are back office, maybe revenue cycle oriented workflows, but clinical documentation is one of those as well, because we don't automate this documentation. There's always a clinician in the loop to trust and verify the drafts that we've generated for them. But it's a very, very high frequency workflow that it is not and should not today be impacting clinical decision making. We're not telling a doctor what antibiotic or oral oncolytic to use. We're just capturing the ground truth of what they've discussed. And so it's one of those use cases that sort of checked off all the right boxes in terms of being high frequency, lower stakes, and something where this technology can truly sing. So now, what a part of the moment for us, and part of what's helped us, I think, scale, is being able to demonstrate that we have the people, and we have the culture, and we have the resources to go millions of miles deep on what it means to be premium in the space, to serve all the different clinicians and all the different settings and all the different languages, and make clear that these notes are not just notes in a vacuum, that these notes should also serve, for example, other functions in the health system, like revenue cycle.
Yeah, when we think about what these notes reflect, as you just said, um, ambient AI feels like just the beginning. So, as these tools evolve, what do you think the clinician's job would look like in 5 years, and what role will companies like Abridge play in shaping that?
So, in the next 5 to 10 years, we certainly do not think that clinicians, that doctors or nurses, are going to be fully automated. Now, there are probably people out there who think that's the case, and we do not think that. Now, that might be my bias as a practicing cardiologist, but when we think from first principles about what doctors and nurses do, there are any number of tasks that they do on a daily basis that we should absolutely aim to automate. But when you think about all of the things they do, it's just impossible for me to imagine, full automation. And there was an American Journal of General Internal Medicine article that was published a couple years ago, that suggested that doctors need 30 hours a day to get all of their work done. So, even if we're not automating all of the things they do, we have our hands full here. There's enough to go after, and it's a question of like sequencing the right tasks that we can help them with in the right order. So we've believed that clinical documentation is one of the first most important tasks. Now, we also believe, though, that that conversation between the professional and the patient is upstream of any number of other workflows. Those conversations inform, for example, order entry. After I see a patient, I'm going to write a note, but then I'm also going to place my orders inside the medical record. And we've had the privilege of being able to co-develop with Epic, for example, a workflow inside that medical record that can also be just as big of a game changer as clinical documentation, in terms of being able to unburden clinicians and help them simply trust and verify, the medications or the procedures or the referrals that they've placed for that patient that they just, took care of. But there's other workflows that are beyond that. I think conversations are upstream of not just clinical documentation, but revenue cycle, which means coding, whether it's in the fee for service world or the risk adjustment world. These notes need to be concordant with those codes. We have a responsibility to generate the best possible notes. But then there are also upstream of care management, clinical decision support, upstream of ultimately experiences and outcomes. So I think over the next 5 years, what we think we'll see is that this technology, we're going to be able to scale it everywhere, and certainly a big part of our investment over these last few years is building the infrastructure and the people and the processes to be able to do that, to be able to serve every clinician that's out there. But then, I think where does that leave us? I think it leaves us in a world where healthcare feels even more human, where clinicians are that much more present with the patients in front of them. And when we started the company, and everyone in our company and our Zach, our CTO, has his own stories for what gave him conviction, but for what gave me conviction was in part my patients, not just my professional experience, but my patients. And one of the stories that I frequently tell is that in March of 2018, I saw a patient in my weekly cardiology clinic. She had a 10-year history of breast cancer, and she was about to see me because she was prescribed doxorubicin for her chemotherapy that could potentially affect her heart. So she needed a cardiologist to sort of evaluate and see, weigh the risks and benefits. And she was super nervous and anxious over that entire encounter, crawling out of her skin. And so at the end of the encounter, I asked her why, and if there was something I did or something I said to make her feel so clearly like uncomfortable. And she told me that for the last 10 years, her husband had come to every single visit with a new doctor, except this one. He just couldn't make it for whatever reason. And she's an English professor at the University of Pittsburgh, incredibly eloquent. She told me that him taking notes in the corner of the room, which is what he would do. That's the differentiated thing that he would bring to these encounters, not just the sort of, obviously like the care and the support, but it's this work he would do, this task that he would complete. He would take notes in the corner, but him doing that meant that she could feel more present with the clinician. She could make eye contact. And then they could go home and they could rewrite all the notes that he had taken and maybe Google all the big words, the medicalese, and rewrite their story, and then go to the next clinician and retell it and feel like the main characters as opposed to someone looking in from the outside. And I think what her experience has in common with clinicians is that we feel the same way as doctors and nurses. We want to be more present. We want to make more eye contact. We want to, build stronger relationships, knowing the therapeutic value of that. And we want to ultimately get closer and closer to what drove and catalyzed us to go to medical school and nursing school and make all of those sacrifices at some point in our life in the first place. And so what we're trying to do is thread the needle through the most important people in healthcare, clinicians, the care team, but also patients at the center, and create and not just these drafts of notes, whether it's a clinical note, whether it's a visit summary for the patient, but also unburden them from all the other tasks that, inform these conversations but come after. And, the idea is that this will just lead to more person-centered care over time. And I think from the perspective of business, this will also lead over time to new business models. And I think if there's one industry that needs more new business models, innovative business models, it's healthcare.
That's incredible. Shiv, this has been tremendous. I thank you for your time. It's been a privilege getting to know you, and I look forward to meeting you at the World Health Innovation Forum later on this year.
Awesome, Nick. Thanks so much. It's been a privilege to be here as well. Appreciate your time.
That was Dr. Shiv Rao. Now, unnatural signals.
This episode shows us that technology doesn't survive by being impressive. It survives by being trusted. Here's what we're logging. Real platforms are stacks, not tricks. Sustainable AI is built from many systems working together, not a single clever model. Trust is earned with evidence. In medicine, credibility grows only when performance improves and keeps improving. Efficiency locks new models. When time is returned to clinicians, entirely new ways of delivering care become possible. This is innovation that protects the human core of the system.
Thanks for listening to Unnatural Selection. If you enjoyed the episode, subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone shaping the future. Explore more at unnaturalselection.net and connect with us on LinkedIn and Facebook. Until next time, keep evolving.